been with Pre-Health Dreamers for 3 years now. And it's been such an amazing experience. As mentioned, I come from the Cal State system. That's where I grew in, my education and then also in my professional life. I am very just grateful for a lot of the things that I learned while working in higher education. And I just felt that there's so much to know about how so much insight when you're working in admissions on that other side of things, doing recruitment, doing family engagement, working with staff and faculty. You just get a lot of insight of how things work. And being an advocate at heart, I really wanted to use kind of that background that I gained from working in higher education, and bring it over to really train and work with students and educators so that they learn how to navigate the system from the outside, really what to look for and how to advocate for themselves. We do that a lot at Pre-Health Dreamers. We do a lot of advocacy 101 because, aside from networking, which we'll talk about in a little bit, knowing how to self-advocate for yourself is really a lifeline for a lot of folks, especially if you are undocumented, a DACA recipient, TPS, immigrant overall. And so I'm hoping that the presentation today brings a little bit more insight for all of you. If we can go to the next slide, Nicole. So we have around 45 minutes to cover a really big topic, a really complex topic that has a lot of very big details, or very small details and very big details. So I'm kind of breaking it down a little bit for you in 3 different ways. First, we're going to be talking about general policies, like some little things to be aware of, like what's an I-10? Some folks already know what that is. What does licensure mean? What do background checks look like, especially if you don't have a social security number? So a little bit of background for folks that may not be aware of some of these just processes that exist, or processes or benefits that exist for folks who are undocumented, or that may exist for folks who are undocumented. Next, we're going to look at the big picture ideas. I really want you guys to open up your mindset, take the box away. I always say when you are in school, whether it's high school, community college, university, and on, we really get taught to think in a streamlined way, right? So you're going to go to high school, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to a 4-year school, you're going to get your degree, and you're going to work at some type of business institution. You're going to have a very specific career. So we're really, during this presentation, I want to talk about more thinking outside that streamlined narrative, thinking about, outside of the options that regular counselors, regular, institutions, universities have for you when you're graduating from school. Because we're kind of taught that that's the only thing that exists, when it doesn't. There's so many options for undocumented students. The only difference is that a lot of the educators are not informed in this. So we really have to take that initiative and look for the resources ourselves, unfortunately, in order to be able to gain kind of this information that we need in order to be successful afterwards. Pre-Health Dreamers does a lot of training for educators, like think outside the box, educators. Don't just think that your students who are undocumented can go into the nursing program and then work at a hospital, because that's not how it's going to work for them. Another also message that I want you guys to think about. I want you guys to also think about have that institutionalized mentality when you guys are going through college or university, because there are things that you're going to have to follow. But there are times that even my own staff, I tell them, deinstitutionalize your brain a little bit. Don't think about rules. Don't think about protocols. Don't think about regulations and policies, because a lot of times these things were not created to serve undocumented communities. Rules are set there to sometimes keep you out of these spaces. So I want you guys to also sometimes question those rules, questions that authority a little bit so that you can open up your mind to other opportunities. That's always very important. So learn how to balance those things. So during the middle of the presentation, we're going to be thinking about big picture ideas, changing our mindset, changing our vocabulary to open up doors for ourselves, right? What are income generating options? And you notice I don't say employment options because that's not available to undocumented folks. We're going to be talking about income generating options. And then also, what can you do to create opportunities for yourself? What is it that you're going to have to do, and what are steps that you need to start taking in order to meet those goals that you want to achieve, whether they're educational, professional, in whatever degree that you're wanting to seek, or if you're even wanting to seek a degree, but what are the opportunities that you yourself can create so that we're not waiting around for others to open those doors for us? So in the middle of this presentation, we're going to be thinking about those big picture ideas. At the end, we're going to start breaking it down. We're going to start talking about what does it mean to be your own self-proprietor? If that's new to you, you're going to learn a little bit of what that means. What is an LLC? What does it mean to be an independent contractor? A lot of folks have been throwing that word around on social media and education, independent contractor. But what does it really mean? So we're going to break it down a little bit for you. The third part of this presentation, the breaking down of it, is going to take a little bit more work from your end once this presentation ends. So I'm going to give you ideas, things to think about, things to research as you move forward. If you do want to, kind of open up doors that bring in income into you and into your home as a professional, as a student, even now. So we're going to do it in 3 different ways. It can be a little bit overwhelming because the third part, especially, it's like, this is a lot of information. So please know, I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm not going to leave you to do this on your own after this presentation is over. Pre-Health Dreamers has partnered up with undocumented professionals. If you don't follow them on social media, follow them now. We are going to be doing a series like this that just focuses on income generating options for undocumented folks in September. So it's going to be 3-4 webinars for you guys where we break this down even more. So see this as an introductory meeting, and hopefully you guys join us for that other webinar. I'll share the flyer with TheDream.Us. Nicole, I'll share it so you can share it with the folks that are here today so that you guys can hear this again, hopefully process everything I've talked about, researched a little bit, and then join us again later on. Next slide. So to get started, I really just want to give you guys a quick reminder of when was the last time that you met with an immigration attorney. There are some folks that when they've arrived to the US, they were probably very young. And that was the last time that they talked to an immigration attorney. Some of you are probably early college, maybe, yes, I don't know. So it may have been a while since you last spoke to an immigration attorney. In working with immigration attorneys for many years, I've always heard the same thing. Make sure that your students are meeting with an immigration attorney at least every 5 to 10 years. The reason for that is when you first arrived to the US, let's say you were 1 or 5 or 10 years old, the laws may have been different, maybe a lot different, maybe slightly different than what they are now. Sometimes your family was probably nervous to tell the immigration attorney some stuff that may have happened. So you didn't get a full evaluation of what you may be eligible for. So as you get older, times change, opportunities, or policies change across the US. You want to keep meeting with an attorney just to see if anything's changed and see if you now qualify for a status. I'm not an immigration attorney, so I don't feel comfortable answering those kind of questions, but I think it's really important that you guys do meet with somebody. So I am going to put on the chat the link for this directory. It's really great. And you guys are going to get the copies to this presentation where the links are there for you. So just FYI, but I will put it in the link for you. So this website here, actually, if you put your zip code within the website, it will give you a list of nonprofits around your area that actually provide low cost or free legal clinics. So you'll be able to meet with an attorney for an evaluation. I always tell folks, try to meet with at least 2 to 3 people. Just to, one, to see what they're saying, and two, to see who you feel the most comfortable with. 2 things. When you're talking to, or a couple things, when you're talking to counselors, advisors at your schools, when you're talking to immigration attorneys, when you're talking to doctors in clinics or in hospitals, these folks are actually going to better your life, better your health, better your situation. You want to make sure that you're very comfortable with the person that you're working with. Don't just settle for any immigration attorney, even if it's free. Don't settle for just meeting with, a specific doctor because they're the ones that saw you because you were undocumented. There's so many free clinics out there. Some folks, depending on your state, you do qualify for insurance or some type of health access. Shop around. Who makes you feel most comfortable? Who makes you feel like they're actually going to make your life better when it comes to immigration, your health, and your education? So always build that network, put more people into your bubble when it comes to these 3 things. So go onto that website if you haven't met with somebody. They would be the ones to know whether or not you qualify for an immigration status, or what are the updates with DACA right now, or what will they possibly be in the near future. These are the folks that really are more of the experts in this. So I always recommend that you guys make really good friends with them. Next slide. Another thing, many of you may already know this, but I just wanted to bring it up into your, the front part of your mind. We're going to be talking a lot about ITINs today, and that is your individual tax identification number. So folks that do not have DACA don't have a social security number, or don't have TPS. They don't have a social security number. An ITIN was actually created at the national level so that folks who don't have social security numbers can pay taxes if there's any income being generated into their home. So, of course, at the federal government level, right, they make it very difficult for you to apply for a residency status, for a citizenship status, but they're always going to make it very easy to take your money. So they created this ITIN. So folks without social security numbers, without a status, can actually file taxes at the end of the year. So let's say you babysat, your mom babysat all year long, right? And she actually made a really good income out of it because she had like 3 or 4 kids, that she was, or they were cleaning homes, or she has her own business already. Folks who are undocumented do file for taxes, do pay taxes. And usually if your family was filing taxes, you probably also have an ITIN number because they were claiming you on their taxes. So that ITIN number stays with you your entire life unless you do get a social security number down the line. If you get a social security number, you no longer use that ITIN. You will forever have that social security number. So to apply for an ITIN, I'll go ahead and put, you're going to go ahead and visit the IRS office or the IRS website for instructions on how to apply for your ITIN. And I'll try to put that link later on because we're going to talk about ITINs a little bit more in depth later. So I'll put the link there for you. But if you don't know if you have an ITIN, check with your parents and see if you have one. You probably do. Some folks don't know. If you don't have one and you're sure you don't have one, we highly recommend that you apply for one, but you apply for one when you do start generating income. That is one of the main things that you do have to have when you're applying for an ITIN number. Next slide. So aside from filing taxes, an ITIN number can now be used in so many other different ways. One of the different ways that this can be used, or one of the other ways this ITIN number can be used other than filing for taxes, is to get your professional license. So many individuals, when they're going into a very specific career, they have to get a license to practice, not so much to get their degree, but to actually start practicing in the field that they got their degree in. So this would be like cosmetology. So the folks that cut your hair, they got a license, a professional license. A tattoo artist, a nurse, doctor, lawyer, right? There's so many different professional license that exist out in the world. And so in order for you to get a professional license, the rules are going to be very different based on the state that you live in across the country. For some folks, if you're undocumented without a social security number, that ITIN number will help because it opens up doors in other states that don't allow you to get a license if you don't have a social security number. However, a lot of the policies regarding licenses are up to the state to decide of how they run that. So they're going to vary by state. They're going to even vary sometimes by profession. But I want you to take a look at the right side of the screen. These are just examples of some of the states that we know of that provide professional licenses to individuals that don't have social security numbers, that don't have DACA. Right, that's California, Colorado, Illinois, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico. These states open their licenses to all of the professions. So in these states, you can become a licensed nurse, a licensed attorney, a licensed cosmetologist, a licensed tattoo artist. These are the states that you can do it even if you don't have a social. However, you have to have an ITIN number. There are other states that have opened up their professional licenses for folks, but it may only be in specific degrees, and it may also only be open to DACA recipients who do have social security numbers for employment authorization. An example of this is in Indiana and Arkansas. So in Arkansas, as you can see, it's only for nursing and teaching licenses for folks that have DACA. That's all they've opened it up to now. But one thing that I want you to notice is that a lot of the policies around licensure changed recently. California was the first back in 2014. But most recently, as you can see, Colorado 2021, New Jersey 2020, New Mexico 2020. So I want you guys to kind of research the state where you live in, see what work is happening around licensure, because you don't know, there's probably a bill already in place that folks are trying to push so that undocumented individuals do have access to those professional licenses. We have seen things change very quickly in some states, and in some states it takes a little bit longer. So I always encourage you guys to not just research, but also especially if it affects you, get involved. How can I help pass these laws in my state so that I can get a professional license? Next slide. Again, having a professional or having an ITIN helps you get a professional license, but it can also help in getting a background check. So a little bit of background information regarding background checks. You actually do not need a social security number in order to get a background check. That's a myth that a lot of schools believe is true and correct and valid. You don't always need a social security number in order to get a background check. An ITIN does help because some companies do it with an ITIN, but at the end of the day, there are so many companies that do background checks, including LifeScan, with your fingertips. So let's just take this as an example. If you are ever, because a lot of times they're doing background checks really for the criminal background check, especially if you're working with children, so if you want to intern at a hospital, at a clinic, if you're going to be having hands-on, especially with kids, a lot of times that background check, especially the criminal background check, is very necessary. So when you are, let's say, booked, right? Let's say you did commit a crime and you're booked at a jail or a prison or a federal institution. What is the one way that they always process you? It's through your fingertips. It's not through your social security number. You know, some folks don't even have a social security number when they're detained. The way that they know that they process you is through your fingertips. So if folks are looking for a criminal background check, that is one of the best ways to do a background check through your fingertips. And so a lot of background check companies, that is one of the ways and methods that they use to conduct it. They don't use your social all of the time. It helps because it probably brings up things with your credit score. It can probably even bring up other things like where you've lived and things like that. But as far as like the criminal record, it's not as useful as your fingertips. The problem with a lot of these, the problem that we have come across is that a lot of schools or clinical sites, especially if you're going into nursing or the health field, a lot of volunteer opportunities, especially like at a daycare, if you're planning to, help out with a soccer team and they want you to get a background check, they don't know that you can get one. So you have to kind of educate the folks. That's the hard part. You have to educate them and say, hey, can we ask the company if they can do a background check with my fingertips because of a lack of social security number? Some of them will be open to them, some don't understand. So it really takes that advocacy work and that educating on your part. So that's why I say, like, if they don't take it, that's the now what next step. So there are companies that do it. When they ask you for the social, you'd say, I don't have one. They'll basically just put all zeros or all one. Very similar to when you're doing a financial aid application and you don't have a social. They'll put in all nines or all ones or all zeros to be able to process it. Same thing with background check companies. They'll use that same type of method. Next slide. So internships, clinicals, and residency. How do you get experience when you don't have a social security number? Right? You really have to open up your network. Do you guys know what I mean when I talk about network? I don't know, some folks can put it in the chat. What do I mean when I'm talking about a network? You have to open up your network. You have to network, first of all. Does anybody kind of know what that means? I know some folks, sometimes it's a very connections with other people. Thank you, Angel. Anybody else? And yeah, connecting with other people is going to look very different based on where you are in your educational life and in your professional life. So right now, if you're a student, really kind of getting that experience really means talking to a lot of your faculty, your professors at your campus, to the counselors, to the career center. I've had students that are going into nursing and they're looking for a hospital to intern at. Basically, they looked up all of the low income or free clinics around their area and they went door to door, old school, right? Like when I was looking for a job back when I was 16, I didn't have Indeed, I didn't have the internet, so I had to go door to door giving my resume. A lot of students do that right now. So they'll go to different clinics and be like, look, this is my resume. This is what I have to offer you. Let me know if you have volunteer opportunities for me. And that's how they've been finding them. They've been, they've gone to the career center, which is great. You can get some help there. But sometimes if you don't get those matches that you want, sometimes we have to take it into our own hands and go kind of meet folks, go out there and tell them that you're looking for this experience so that, doors can be open for you. So that is one of the ways that you can get experience when you don't have a social security number. Not everybody requires a social security number. Also, if they do require a background check, that's when you start telling them, especially if it's a health clinic or, somewhere where you're working with children. You have to start talking about that. So really putting yourself out there and having conversations with folks, letting them know what is the kind of experience that you're needing, because you never know who is going to open up that door for you. Just as an example, I was an advisor for many years at the Cal State system. And students were always in my office, telling me how their day was going, kind of what their needs are. I had a very, a big like policy, like an open door policy. So students were always in my office. and telling me what their needs were. So when I was at the store, when I was at a conference, when I was at a meeting, I'd see a flyer as like, oh, we're seeking interns. And I'm like, oh yeah, this so-and-so person just told me that they were looking for one. So I'm going to take a picture of it and send it their way. So the more you talk to us, if we're your advisor, your counselor, your dean, your teacher, your supervisor at work, the more you tell us of what you're looking for and how you want to grow as an individual, the more we're going to think about you when we're out doing our daily tasks, and we're going to bring these resources your way. So you want to share stuff with folks. You don't always have to share your story, but share, like, where do you want to grow? What kind of skills do you want to gain? What kind of skills do you want to keep practicing in order to become that professional that you want to in the future? So one thing that really stops folks when they're looking for any type of experience, whether it's an internship, a fellowship, a volunteer opportunity, a scholarship, anything like that, one thing that always stops folks is when it has that permanent resident or citizenship requirement on there. I want all of you guys to take that next step and don't let that requirement stop you right away. I always encourage folks to go ahead and call the organization, call the department and say, hey, why is it that you guys require a resident? That keeps me from applying. However, I'm a really amazing candidate. Can we know why? Sometimes it's because it is federally funded, and that does restrict folks to the folks that do have DACA or don't have a social security number. However, take it from experience from somebody who has created scholarships. When I was very young, I didn't know any better. So I just took an application from somebody else who was also doing a scholarship, and it's like, okay, well, I'll just copy what you did without ever questioning it, right? So that immigration question, that citizenship requirement, I just copied it onto my application so that I can, open this up without ever realizing, like, why am I even asking for the citizenship? Why does it matter? There's a student in need who has, who applied, they're a great candidate. Why does their residency or citizenship, even matter? So you want to contact that organization and ask, be like, hey, is there any way that we can still apply? This is why I want to apply. This is why I'm a great candidate. Is there any way to change that requirement? And let me tell you, a lot of my students have done it, and they've been able to change those requirements for themselves and for those that come to them afterwards. So don't be shy to contact them and ask them about that. When you find an internship that you really like, but they're requiring you to do it, always ask that follow-up question, why? The hard part of that is that now you're going to have to also sometimes educate them. So you're also going to have to make that decision whether that opportunity is worth your time to take the time to educate those individuals and say, hey, I can get a background check. Yes, I can get paid, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I can't get paid as a regular employee. It would have to be through a grant or a stipend, right? So is it really worth your time to be the one to lead those conversations with folks? And then also something else to think about. I know some folks are not able to leave their home because sometimes they're the ones helping the family. They're the head of household. They're responsible for brother and sister, or they're responsible for mom and dad. I know that was one for me why I didn't leave for a while. I didn't take opportunities because I'm like, I can't, because I need to be here for my dad or my mom, or, so really try to process that as like, is there a way that I can take opportunities? Because there may not be this opportunity where I live, but there might be one in a different state. Can I take it? Is it a 2-3 week opportunity? Can I take it out there? What is it? So really try to process a lot of these, a lot of these options that may be available to you down the road, and hopefully you have the opportunity to have very open conversations with your support system, whether it's your family, friends. I know some folks have lived with a faculty member from their university who's renting a room, and that was their support system. So talk to folks and see how they can support you through these types of decisions, or help you kind of navigate these options. Next slide. Next. So thinking through a different lens. This is now where I want you guys to take that box out of you, the rules out of you. And I want you guys to really start thinking about changing your vocabulary and your mindset. So when folks RSVP'd, I don't know who RSVP'd, but I do know some of the questions that you guys asked. And a lot of folks were asking, how can I find a job if I don't have a social security number? How can I be an employee if I don't have a social security number? You cannot be employed without a social security number, right? By labor laws, legally, you cannot get a job, apply as a regular employee without a social security number. So what do we do, right? We have to change the way where we kind of ask for a lot of the things that we need. And this is what I mean when I say let's change our vocabulary a little bit. And this is going to take a lot of practice, and this is going to take you coming out of your comfort zone, because that's the language that we're used to. That's the language that our mentors are used to, right? If you go to a career center, they don't even use like income generating options. They're going to use employment. So we really want to get out of that comfort zone and start speaking in a certain way that will kind of get us a little bit more of the results that we want. So when you don't have a social security number, you cannot be employed. So you cannot walk into a business and say, hey, I saw that you guys need an administrative assistant. Can I apply for that job? Once you get the job, like, you know what? I don't have work permit. I don't have a social. That puts you in a really sticky situation sometimes, unless you know the folks and they're willing to work with you. What you always want to say is, hey, I want to contract with your company. I want to provide services to your company. I see that you need an administrative assistant. I can do things like that. These are the types of services that I can provide for your front office at the clinic. So it's going to be a different way of looking for income generating options at different locations. It's not always going to be, unfortunately, I need to work, at a supermarket or at a clothing store. It's going to be a little bit different of how you're seeking these experiences that you want, especially paid experiences or income generating experiences, other than I am looking for employment. But later on, we are going to talk a little bit more about finding these income generating options, especially once you get your degree. So just a little heads up, this is how we're going to start changing our thoughts about you're not going to be an employee, especially if you don't have DACA, you don't have a social security number. What we're going to be looking for is places that you can provide your services as either a contractor or as your own business. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So let's think about the big picture. And I think this is where it gets very difficult, but we're going to work on this together. And I want you guys, if you guys can, put it in the chat for me. I want you guys to think about skills that you have, right? Do you play music? Do you know how to play the guitar really well? Do you play sports? Are you willing to teach kids how to, kick the ball around for a few hours? Are you an artist? Do you do hair and makeup? What are these skills that you have right now as an undergraduate student that you can use in order to generate income? So I don't know if you guys have like a couple of ideas or a couple of things that you think would be great for you right now. So sports, hair, somebody put it already, cleaning. How about organizing? Does anybody organize? Somebody's bilingual. Yes, that is amazing. And these are things that you're amazing at as an undergrad, because we have, immigrant families. That's the first thing. Every Saturday morning we were cleaning. We're great cleaners. We're great. A lot of us are great at cleaning, or that's just in our blood. Bilingual. Yes, some of my students are trilingual. Babysitting, organizing. Oh, I would need an organizer in my house, right? Basic coding skills. Yes. So there are so many skills that you have that folks don't have and that they need in their lives, right? So what can you do right now that you are an undergrad in order to generate those income? So you're not going to go look for a job. You're going to go look for folks that are going to pay you to do these things for them. So if you do have organization skills and you want to organize somebody's home, somebody's office, they can go ahead, create your own business. This is when we're going to start thinking now, how can I be a business? How can I be of service to others? When we think about businesses, I don't want you guys to think about a building. I don't want you guys to think of a store just right away. I want you to think of yourself as the business itself. Now with COVID, online work has been just, people have realized how to do things online now. Yes, virtual assistant. I have actually a friend who's a virtual assistant, and she works for different companies, and she does all of like the appointment setting, the email correspondence from her home. She does all of this. Never set foot in the place. So we want to take advantage of a lot of things that the businesses learned of doing things online, and use it to our advantage. Right. So I want you guys to think of the things for now as you're an undergrad, if you are a student, but then I also want you guys to start thinking about the big pictures when you do graduate. Do you want to be a nurse? Can you do home care? Can you be a health advocate from home, right? Or online? What can you do with your degree once you do graduate, right? Are you a business degree? Can you, be an advisor for businesses down the road and do that as your business when you graduate? So there's so many different things that you can do, but you just have to know what your skills are now as an undergrad that can help you generate income and later on. So there are so many different types of businesses that I want you guys to start thinking about. And again, don't get overwhelmed. I'm hoping that you guys join us for our series where we'll talk about this a little bit more. And these are things that you guys can always research. But there's two different types of examples of businesses that exist. One of them is service-based and one of them is product-based. So a lot of you guys brought stuff up on the chat that are service-based. So like translating. Are you good in math? Can you be a tutor for math for middle schoolers? Can you open up your own business in doing that? Kind of market it out there. A graphic designer, a virtual assistant, all of that. There's also another business that's product-based. So this is when, are you an artist that wants to sell their items in Etsy? Do you make clothes? Can you create a contract with Amazon so that they can sell your stuff for you? Right? In-person sales, pop-up stores, working at the flea market, at the swap meet, at the indoor swap meet, at the mall. Pop-up stores, are very beneficial to folks, especially if you're selling items or know how to do that trade. Do you make your own jewelry? I know a lot of folks that have done it. I had a student before that she was a tattoo artist. That's why I keep bringing it up. That was her she had her website, she had her business card, and she was an eyebrow tattoo artist. So that's how she was paying off her undergrad, because she did not qualify for financial aid even as an undergraduate. So there's so many things. It's just, what are you good at and what can you use? Next slide, please. And I know I'm running a little behind. I'm so sorry, Nicole. I'll try to go through the slides a little bit faster. So here's just a little bit. Next slide, please. So a little bit more opportunities to venture into. These are just experiences. Physical therapists, we do have folks that have been independent contractors as physical therapists. What does that mean? You actually, by word of mouth, you actually get to work with families like, hey, my grandmother needs a physical therapist. My mom, my baby, they had an accident, or are trying to learn how to walk, but we see that they're not walking right. The doctor, asked us to get them a physical therapist. There's, I have somebody who's actually has her own business as a physical therapist. And it was in the time when DACA was kind of like behind. So she lost her DACA. She was let go from the hospital. So out of like basically survival instinct, I have to do something. And she started her own physical therapy business. Now that her DACA came back, she goes, you know what? I love it so much. I never went back. I just kept growing my business. So really, what is it that you can do? Next slide, please. I think it's the previous one. I think you're missing a slide. It's okay, Nicole. I'll go ahead and go over it on my end. So I really want you guys, we're gonna get started right now with some of the things that you guys are gonna have to research. They're gonna take a little bit longer for you to kind of get started with. But let me tell you, my physical therapist, who was my student and is now a professional, she was already a physical therapist, and I asked her, how long did it take you to start your own business and really get it, all the paperwork done, if that's the route you want to take, through your state, through your county? And she said, it only took me 2 weeks. So it seems like very complex and very complicated. I think it's more of getting used to it and what does everything mean, but the process itself does not take as long as we think it does. So I encourage you guys, as we start talking about the next following slides, I want you guys to kind of take this information and continue to research it, and get comfortable with it. I think that's going to be the part that takes a little bit longer, but once you have a grasp on it, that's when then you can really take off. And also another tip for you guys, if you guys know each other at Dream.Us, the students know each other, and you know what fields you want to study, work together to find this information out. Work together. I always tell folks, there's power in numbers. If there's 3 or 4 business majors in this group right now, contact each other, get to know each other, and say, hey, let's start brainstorming, especially if you don't have DACA, what kind of business can we start? Let's start doing it either together, or let's start helping each other in brainstorming and getting all the paperwork ready. I always encourage folks also to find out, like in your friends or circle of friends, who's good at what, who's good at maybe some, with Canva. If you guys don't know what Canva is, it's this platform online. It's called canva.com that helps you create your own business cards, your own flyers while you're getting started, and there's no money to get really like professional ones done. You can always do your own. If you learn how to play with this online project or this online program, but maybe if there's somebody already who knows how to do that and they can help you create your own business cards, right? To be a tutor for English, to be a tutor for science or math, and even start your own website. That, I think that's really going to take you up to that next level and really seeing you look very professional in the eyes of many. Which ones are your friends that have a little bit more social skills that you can tag along with them to the places where they're networking, or if you build your own group here, today, there's 4 business degree folks in this, get together. Like, hey, what are you good at? And how can we use your skills and use my skills, put them together to help benefit us as a group? Again, power in numbers. And now to the slide that's in front of you. So tips if you're starting your own business. I encourage all of you, if you're not in a business degree, if that's not what you're seeking, it doesn't matter if you're going into nursing, into medicine, into cosmetology. I really encourage you guys to take a business class. If you can add on a business minor to your degree, if you're still a freshman and your campus allows you to do that, I highly encourage you to take a business class. Even me as a nonprofit director, when I came from higher education into nonprofit, I had to learn how to do a budget of this size, right? Do a budget and hiring folks. What is how to run a really successful business. I really had very little experience that. I want to be honest because I want to put that kind of seed in all of you. Take a business class. If it's too late for you to add that minor, go ahead and look into organizations in your area. That there are a lot of nonprofits that help you and teach you on how to create your own business for free. We have one here in Southern California. They're all across the country that they'll teach you how to do your budget, how to, create your flyers, how to market your business, how to start a website. They do all of this for you. It's going to come in so much handy, especially if you don't have a social security number and are going to have to take matters into your own hands in generating those income. Really get to know your community, target your clients. If you do want to be a tattoo artist, what kind of people live around your area? What kind of tattoos do you want to give? So do that, kind of try to evaluate what is the community that you're going to target and be able to build your services for them. Don't try to meet everybody's needs. Try to really target one business so that you really get a hands-on and are very thorough and precise in the work that you're doing. And then second, once you start generating that income, make sure that you file your taxes. It looks really good on you, especially if an opportunity ever appears for you to be able to fix your immigration status. Filing your taxes and paying taxes actually looks as a plus for you. Next slide, please. Again, look for training, look for resources from nonprofits in the community, get certificates. Even if you can't get a minor anymore at your school, see if they offer any type of certificates, especially in business. Or maybe you want to be a nurse, but you want to get a certificate in Spanish, so it opens up, makes you look a little bit better in your CV or in your resume. Add a little bit to yourself, and it's really important to start that early, because once you get more advanced in your programs, it becomes a little bit more difficult to do a lot of this. So that's why I'm really happy that you guys as Dream.Us, you're still undergrad, you still have a little bit of time. Next slide. A lot of this is going to take a lot of practice, and it's going to take time. It's going to take time for you guys to research and looking for a lot of the internships that exist out there, advocating if they have that citizenship requirement for you or a citizenship requirement. It's going to take time for you to go in there and advocate and say, why? Like, why is it that we need it? Is there a specific reason? Really try to plead your case. This is really when it takes a little bit of more time. And I know it's a lot of kind of putting yourself out there is very scary for a lot of folks. So that's why I say it's going to take practice and really getting out of your comfort zone, or sticking with people who are doing it, who may be able to support you in these efforts. We do it all the time with our students. We work with dental schools, medical schools who are denying undocumented students, and we call our students and the decision makers at that school, and we sit down with them and have these conversations with them. Next slide. So there are steps in starting your own business. They're going to be here on the screen for you. So I'm hoping that as you guys are thinking like, hey, I want to be a tutor in English, right? Or I want to be a tutor in science. I want to write out like, what can I do for folks? What is my capacity? Am I only, really well-rounded in chemistry, or is it chemistry, biology, and anatomy? Really start writing your business plan and what type of services you can provide and who's going to be your audience. Is it going to be middle school students? Is it going to be high school students? Is it going to be community college students? These are things that you really want to start thinking about as you're starting your own business plan, right? What's going to be your name? What kind of permits do I need? Am I going to be selling food? What kind of permit do I need to do for that? Am I going to be tutoring kids? Am I going to be helping out at a soccer league? As part of my business, what kind of permits do I need for that? What kind of background checks do I need for that? So these are things that always can be found. Guys, let me be upfront with you. A lot of this information is from online. So if you start searching things up, you're going to find a whole bunch of information that's going to be able to guide you in starting your own business. Type it in the website, type it on a website and say, how do I start my own tutoring business? How can I start my own makeup, business, or, providing these services to folks? You're going to find a lot of these things online. It just takes a little bit more time to get it started. So once you guys get these slides, these are the steps to starting your own business. Start researching it, or meet with us in September for our other sessions on how to start your own business, and we'll get to the nitty-gritty of these things. You don't need a social security number to start your own business. That's why I bring it up. Next slide. And next slide. So what is an LLC? So we hear a lot of times things get thrown around, words get thrown around like an LLC, what's an independent contractor? Really what an LLC is, you can be a tutor to your neighbors, to your cousins, without having to start a legitimate business, getting all the paperwork done, right? It's just by word of mouth. My friend knows a friend who needs a tutor. Their other friend needs a tutor, and that's how you start things. But I always encourage folks that once you get that practice to do the paperwork to actually make your business legit in the community, right? Start your own LLC. Go to your city hall, see what permits you need there or how you can do it to be able to get legal status for your own business. How do you do that? And that actually helps you out in getting more opportunities. You're not just going to be you're not just going to be helping, your brothers or sisters coach when, on Saturday during soccer practice, right? You actually can expand your business and get more folks to really hire you and contract with them. What is an independent contractor and what's the difference? So an independent contractor is somebody who just does just that. They go from person to person providing that service, right? So if it's a makeup artist, you are an independent contractor that is hired for a party, after party to do the makeup of the bride, of the bridesmaids, and then they refer you over to somebody else. You're your own independent contractor. You're contracting with folks for a service, and then they'll pay you back. An LLC is an independent contractor who actually made their business legit through getting the permits, through submitting their business proposal over to their county that they're going to be working on. So an independent contractor is somebody who can have an LLC or just work as an independent contractor. Those are the two big differences. What is best? Really, at the end of the day, what an LLC does for you or having your own business, rather than just being an independent contractor that works, let's say that you are a makeup artist. Let's just go to that one. Let's say you are a makeup artist and the person that you did your makeup for gets an eye infection for some reason. I know it's kind of gross, but it happens. They get an eye infection after you did their makeup. Okay. If you're an independent contractor without a business, they can actually sue you. If you have a business, they'll sue the business. So it's two different things. What's the difference between suing you and suing the business? When you have a business, you actually have to get insurance for your business. Sounds complicated, but it really isn't. If you've gotten car insurance for your vehicle, it's basically the same thing. A lot of, insurance companies, they'll insure your home, they'll insure your car, they'll insure your business. And you just pay a small fee every month. But they'll have like a liability insurance like for $1 million. So if somebody sues you as a company, let's say you were helping somebody, practice their soccer kicks on the weekend, right? And the child for some reason falls and hurts themselves. The family sues you. At the end of the day, you do have an LLC. It's kind of like that liability for you so that they're suing your business, your insurance gets involved, they help you pay that rather than you getting sued yourself. So that is one of the big great things about starting your own business, getting it legitimized within the county, within the state, rather than just going door to door and you being your own person, and kind of, not being so secure with that liability there. Next slide. So as an independent contractor and as a business, again, it is very recommended that you are filing taxes. As a sole proprietor, which is also known as an independent contractor, you don't work for anybody. So even as an independent contractor, you cannot go up to a business and say, hey, I want to work your front office. You cannot do any clerical work. There's very strict requirements when you are wanting to be an independent contractor. An independent contractor means that you're providing very specific services and there's a very specific contract between you and that business. The moment that business tells you have to show up from 8 to 5, you have to answer the phone, you're breaking independent contractor rules. A lot of folks were asking me, can I be an independent contractor at my school? 99% of the time, you cannot be an independent contractor for your school, because a lot of times the things that you would be doing at your school would be the clerical work that breaks independent contractor rules. So you cannot be answering the phone. You cannot, you cannot be told by your supervisor what time to get there, what to do. It's really like, I'm going to be doing this project for you. I'm going to be doing this type of activities for you, rather than them telling you what to do. So a lot of folks were asking in the questions, can I be an independent contractor at my school? And the answer is no. What can you do at your school? Is really look for a lot of the opportunities that are paid, such as internships, grants, stipend. So a lot of times faculty need researchers to be able to help them. That is something that you can look into, because as long as it's a stipend or a grant that they're providing you, they cannot pay you a regular salary through their HR. So it has to be through a scholarship that they're providing, or a fellowship. So all of these things, a lot of times with the independent contractor, the laws are also set by the state. So also look into that. But that is why a lot of schools do not do independent contracting, especially for students, because there's so many rules set for independent contractors. One little thing can break that, and there could be a lot of lawsuits happening. So they're very cautious in doing independent contracting, especially with students. But you do want to look for those opportunities that are more fellowship, grant, stipend based. And it takes a lot of times for folks to create those on campuses. So if you're interested in those, start planting those seats with your decision makers. Start planting those seats with the deans of your programs. Say, hey, these opportunities are very small for us if we're undocumented. What can you do to help grow those experiences, or help establish those experiences for us? Can we do some fundraising to create that kind of funding that will allow us to do a grant, or do stipend work, to do fellowship work, regardless of our immigration status. So it's really important for you to be able to open up those lines of conversation. Next slide. And really quick, I know I'm running out of time, I ran out of time, but for independent contractor work or sole proprietor work, what are the great things about this? You're setting your own hours. You're setting your own kind of guidelines, who you want to work with, what kind of work do you want to do? And I think that's one of the greatest things that folks have said. I talked about it with the physical therapist that used to be my student. She had the option to go work back at a hospital. But when she got her DACA, she goes, you know what? I love my job so much. And I love like the flexibility of it. I get to make my own hours. I get to decide who I work with and who I don't work with. So those are really amazing things. The downside of being an independent contractor is that, one, you don't get employment benefits. So you're going to have to kind of seek ways to get those. So look into your community, look into your county, look into your state, because it varies at every level. Where can I get health insurance, or can I get health insurance where I'm at? The other thing also, you don't accrue vacation hours that are paid, right? So there are downsides to that. Another thing also, when you're a contractor and or a sole proprietor, when it's time for you to file taxes, so somebody who works on a regular basis through an employer, gets a regular paycheck every 2 weeks or every month, taxes are taken out every time. So when it comes to filing your taxes, you've already paid some of that back. When you're an independent contractor, sole proprietor, let's say you make, $500 a month tutoring, or teaching somebody how to play the violin. When they paid you, no taxes were paid on your end to the government. So when it's time for you to file taxes at the end of the year, more than likely, you're going to have to pay taxes at the end of the year. You're going to have to, pay that percentage that you didn't pay throughout the last months. So we always encourage folks that when you are generating income now, regardless of how it is, always put some of that money aside, put a percentage aside. So when filing taxes comes around, you are not stuck with that big ticket price, right? Now I'm going to have to pay $5,000 back or $500 back, depending on, it's going to vary based on how much you made that year. So now you can actually just put that money aside. So when, the US government or the federal government comes to say, okay, you owe this much in taxes, you're like, here you go. Or here's, more than half of it. I'll pay the rest in payments. That is possible. So that's another downside that you kind of also have to put that into your budget as you're going along. But I always recommend for folks to do that. A lot of times your career center will not be able to, or they're not super knowledgeable in what independent contractor means. We can go to the next slide. And next slide. And next slide. A lot of this time I just talked about it. So tips on being a contractor. A lot of times your career center is not going to know. I would still highly recommend that you visit with your career center to see what kind of skills you can get from them, whether it's resume building, networking experience. Maybe they do know some opportunities. But when it comes to contractor work, sometimes it's very limited, the information that they know. So you want to venture out of also your career center at your campus. Look at organizations around your area that are business oriented. So like, for example, where I live, there's a Inland Empire Women's Business Center. And I went to some of their classes. They were free. I went to some of their classes to learn a lot of things that I know now. So start looking for that. And I don't think we ever really, like, especially if you're a science major or you're studying to be a teacher, those kind of things never really crossed your mind because you're not a business person. But probably some of your peers that are studying business, they probably are familiar with some of these organizations. So talk to them. But yeah, just put it on your Google search engine or whatever search engine you use. Just say, nonprofits for business owners in the area. And then hopefully you start kind of connecting with them and see what type of resources are there as well. Also, go to events and, when I go to events, even as a director, I'm not Yadi, right? I'm the director of Pre-Held Dreamers. Sometimes even when I just go out and about, who are you? And I start talking about my job because I want folks to find out about it. Really start thinking about that mentality. I'm just going to pick on you because you're the first person here, but like there's somebody named Chris Aviles. When you go out to a mixer, when you go out to an event, you're not just Chris Aviles. You're going to be Chris Aviles. I tutor English or I tutor math on, the weekends. Here's my business card. Here's my website. That is really, it's going to become your identity as you're trying to grow your business. That's also part of networking, and networking for you guys is going to be really a lifeline. Really put those skills out there as much as you can. It's also who you know, not what you know. Again, you never know who's going to open some of those doors up for you. I'm going to go ahead and stop now because you guys are going to get the slides. So you're going to get a lot of the stuff that I was going to talk about afterward was kind of tying things together a little bit, or just some extra help there, some extra information, which you guys hopefully get once you get the slides. But I don't know, Nicole, do we have time for some questions?
Yeah, we can make time for questions. So if anyone has a question, feel free to type it in the chat. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself too.
And what let me see if I can understand the question. Is it the question, Jimena? Oh, I don't know that answer. I think it has to do with your biometrics. Is it going to affect you? I'm trying to put the pieces together because I think there was 3 different. questions there. In regards to the DACA. I would check with, in my case, I would check with an immigration attorney because I'm not an immigration attorney to see what they would say. That's how I'm going to answer that question, just because I don't feel comfortable answering at this point any DACA related questions because there's so many changes going on. But somebody asked, is there anything stopping us from creating a nonprofit? Yes and no. So one of the big things in regards to nonprofit work. So when it comes to income generating options, there's a lot of rules. So nonprofits have a lot of rules, especially when you start hiring folks. So let's say you don't have a social. You don't have a social security number, you don't have employment authorization card. If you want to create a legit nonprofit, you're going to get it registered under a 501c3. You're going to be set with a lot of rules, right? So every time I spend money, every time I buy a pencil, I have to write that down and annotate it because I get audited at the end of the year as to how I spent my money. So when it comes to, independent, the one thing I want you guys to think about, if you start your nonprofit and that's going to be your job, quote unquote, how are you going to get paid if you don't have a social security number? And you're going to have to justify that as a nonprofit director, as a nonprofit coordinator. You're going to have to justify how I'm getting paid without having a social security number. Even for myself, hiring an independent contractor comes with so many rules. And if we go back to slide, let me see here. If we go back to slide, let me really quick. So just as an example, even as a nonprofit, I have a lot of rules to follow when I'm hiring an independent contractor. That independent contractor, if we go to 21 or 22, let me see. Next slide. And next slide. Next slide. Next slide. I think this is another one that you may not have. But I can share my screen too, Nico, if you let me. And so like that, I can show what I'm looking, I want to share. But there's restrictions to hiring independent contractors, even as a nonprofit. So that's why some folks decide to actually start a business or an LLC rather than in a nonprofit, because it gives you a little bit more leeway on how you quote unquote hire. Remember, we want to kind of stay away from saying hire, employee, right? So when you have a nonprofit, there's a lot of restrictions also on how you hire folks and how you contract, especially with independent contractors. As a nonprofit director, when I get audited, I have to show a service agreement with my independent contractor. I have to show a detailed statement of work from my independent contractor. I have to show and prove that they have insurance, liability or professional insurance. So there's things that I have to, as a nonprofit director, prove when I'm connecting with an independent contractor. When you are a business owner, you are able to contract with folks a lot easier. So if you don't have a social and you want to partner with somebody else who doesn't have a social and they're going to be providing services for you as an independent contractor, that's going to be a little bit easier because you don't have the nonprofit rules to follow. That's where it gets a little bit trickier. Also, it's against the law, again, to hire anybody and to contract with anybody knowing that they don't have a social security number or authorization to work. So that's another thing. When you're an independent contractor, you have your own business, you guys are not going to be looking for these opportunities saying, hey, I'm undocumented, this is the only way I can work. Because by law, somebody cannot hire your contract with you knowing that you are undocumented. So when you're promoting yourself in your business, really what you're saying is, hey, this is soccer all day. This is my business is called Soccer All Day. I tutor kids in soccer. I teach them how to kick the ball around. This is how I work. This is my business. I don't work, on a salary base. I work on a contract base. When did you guys hear at any point in that conversation that I'm undocumented? Never. Because that's not part of your business. And you don't want to put that out there when you do have your business. Maybe sometimes with some of your folks that you do partner with and contract with, they'll get to know that, if you want that to happen. But when you're promoting your business, that is not what you're going to be telling folks right away. You're not going to be saying, hey, I'm undocumented, I'm an independent contractor, that's the only way that I can generate income. That's not the language that you're going to be using, right? You are a business owner now. You're going to be providing these services. This is why you want to contract with me, right? Because I do the best makeup in town, right? I have techniques that other folks don't have. I'm a nail technician. I actually do design. I just don't do, one color. So you really have to learn how to sell yourself as a business now. Nowhere in that conversation did you guys hear me say, oh, I'm undocumented. This is the only way I can generate income. So you guys have to start processing that way. So I hope that answered your question about, yes, you can start your own nonprofit. The only thing is that as a nonprofit, once you want to get your own income in, like if you're going to be the director of that nonprofit, how are you going to get paid? And that's where it's going to get a little bit tricky when it comes to a nonprofit director. So a lot of folks actually go into rather starting their own business. It's really good to talk to a lawyer who specializes in businesses, and they can guide you. Again, there's nonprofits that provide this all the time. If you visit with us in August, we're probably going to cover some of that because Undocumented Professionals has a lot of experience in that. They've done the research to start their own business. And so visit with us. Hopefully, did that answer your question? I hope that answered your question. So it's not so much about starting the nonprofit. Anybody can start a nonprofit. It's the restrictions that happen once you start hiring folks or you want to start getting paid for being the director or the coordinator of that nonprofit. That's when it starts to get really tricky.
Well, thank you, Yadi, for your time today and for presenting. We really appreciate it. Thank you to those that attended today. Do know that we are recording and we'll send out the recording sometime next week. And we'll also share the slide deck to this PowerPoint presentation as well. Enjoy the rest of your week and have a good weekend. Thanks, everyone.